future. Ignite the mind, move the nation, nourish and heal our people. Ignite the power of a brand new breed of Filipino. Ignite the mind, light the fuse, the spark of inspiration to save and protect the land. We are DOST and we pave the way for the future. Everything starts when you ignite the mind. DOST.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Science, Technology, and Innovation, Purposive Researches for Smarter Communities, with its third topic on single-use plastics, strategies for smarter cities. We would like to encourage everyone to please share the live streaming of this session seen on the DOST-NCR National Capital Region Facebook page. Thank you. The session will start in 5 minutes. Kindly rename your display name following the format, your full name, plus your institution or your company name. Good afternoon to each and everyone. This program is about to start. For any concerns related to your audio, video, and Zoom meeting application, you may type in your concerns in the chat box, and DOST-NCR personnel will gladly assist you. Also, for the information of all, this session is being recorded for documentation purposes only. We do encourage everyone to please take down notes of the invaluable insights of our speakers. Thank you. Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Welcome to the third session of our webinar series on Science, Technology, and Innovation, Purposive Researches for Smarter Communities. In line with this year's celebrations of the National Science and Technology Week, with its theme of Agham at Teknolohiya, Sandigan ng Kalusugan, Kabuhayan, Kaayusan at Kinabukasan. I am Camila Estimado from DOST-NCR and I will be your host for today's session. Now, to start our program, let us first feel the presence of our Lord through an opening prayer to be led by Engineer Rose Ann Fernandez.
Tayo po ay manalangin at damhin ang presensya ng Diyos. Panginoon, pinupuri ka namin at sinasamba sa araw na ito. Kami ay lubos na nagpapasalamat sa buhay na ipinagkaloob niyo sa amin. Hinihiling po namin na gabayan niyo kami sa gitna ng krisis na kinakaharap ng aming bansa. Alam niyo po ang bawat pangangailangan namin at naniniwala po kami ito'y inyong tutugunan. Pagpalain niyo din po ang bawat isa na magampanan ng tapat ang bawat tungkulin. Pagkalooban niyo po kami ng kahusayan, lalo ang aming mga tagapagsalita, at bigyan niyo rin po kami ng karunungan. Salamat po, Panginoon, sa walang sawang pagmamahal niyo sa amin. Dalangin namin na kami ay loban niyo ng mas matibay na pananalig at kapayapaan mula sa inyong kaharian. Ito ay aming sinasamo sa inyo, Panginoong Hesus, na aming tagapagligtas. Amen.
At this point, we would like to acknowledge the presence of our guests from the DOST regional offices and DOST agencies, our partners from DOST National Research Council of the Philippines and National Academy of Science and Technology, our participants from the local government units, DepEd, SUCs, NGOs, NGAs, and private institutions, as well as those who are watching us live in our Facebook page. Again, good afternoon po to everyone. To formally welcome us, may I call on the Regional Director of DOST-NCR, Mr. Jose B. Patalinhog III.
It is my honor to welcome you, our guests and partners. Thank you for joining us in this session. As the Philippines ranked third on the mismanaged plastic waste in the world, it is important for us to know how to reduce the use of plastic sachets we consume on daily average weight of 163 million. Imagine if we employ packaging technologies to help reduce millions of single sachets and plastic waste thrown every day. Aiming to provide you research-based solution for the single-use plastics and the multi-sectoral approach for environmentally sound practices. We have with us academician Fabian M. Dairit, Chair of Mathematical and Physical Sciences Division of the DOST National Academy of Science and Technology. Many laws and policies have been in place and enforced to manage and protect our environment. Perhaps it is high time that change now comes with us. This challenge of eliminating single-use plastics will remain a challenge if we do not shift to look at it as a solution to a global problem of waste pollutions. Managing our own wastes today not only benefits kinabukasan or the future generation in the long run. As we look at its short-term impacts, a safe and clean environment anchored on agham at teknolohiya is a sandigan ng kalusugan at kaayusan. Thank you and good morning.
Thank you po, RD Jojo, for your welcome message to our participants. And to give us a brief background or idea of today's topic, we have prepared a short video presentation for you. Let us all watch this. I know, excited na po tayong malaman kung ano yung pinrepare ni Academician Dairit sa ating lahat. But first, let me introduce our speaker. First, okay, our speaker to discuss with us the topic on the single-use plastic, the strategies for smarter cities, is a professor emeritus at the Ateneo de Manila University, where he has been teaching since 1983. He was admitted as one of the academician to the National Academy of Science and Technology Philippines in 2009 and currently serves as its vice president. Our speaker obtained his BS Chemistry degree from the Ateneo de Manila University and his masteral and PhD degree in chemistry from Princeton University. He was a research associate at the Oxford University and returned to the Philippines with the DOST Balik Scientist Long-Term Award in 1983. He was one of the 10 outstanding young men awardee for chemistry in 1992. He has been a president of the Integrated Chemists of the Philippines, the accredited professional organization for the chemistry professions under the Professional Regulation Commission, and has served in various government committees related to chemicals. Our speaker applies chemistry to various fields of interest, particularly in medical plants, coconut oil, and environmental chemistry. Join me in welcoming our speaker for the topic Single-Use Plastic, Strategies for Smarter Cities, Academician Fabian M. Dairit. Welcome po,
Sige.
Dr.
Well,
Dairit.
sige. Thank you. Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you, Camille. Can I just share my screen now? Okay. So, yeah, again, good afternoon to everyone. And well, I'd like to thank Mr. Patalingog for the invitation to speak to you on single-use plastics. Now, since I know that the audience are really, local governments, my intention is not to talk to you about the science and technology of plastics because that's really for researchers, and you'll need quite a bit of chemistry and engineering to understand that. But what I'd like to focus on is on the governance of how LGUs can manage this problem of single-use plastics. Maybe to put things into perspective, we should realize that plastics in general, and in particular single-use plastics, it took us over 20 years to adapt to the use of single-use plastics. So before single-use plastics, ano bang ginagamit natin? Di ba mga bayong, mga bag. And this is probably, I don't know, 25, 30 years ago when we started using plastic bags. And since then, the natural course is there's a value chain that is built around single-use plastics, whether it's plastic bags or sachets. So the conversion or moving away from single-use plastic, you need to understand the role they play, that we can introduce measures, governance measures to address the plastic problem of single-use plastic. And of course, you can only do that with the science behind us. So while the LGUs themselves will not be doing, the basic research, they have to understand what's going on with science, so that they can adopt the proper governance measures. So maybe that's just to put things into perspective. So my presentation will be in three parts. First, I'll describe the challenge of single-use plastics. Second is briefly describe what are smart cities. We talk about smart cities a lot. What are smart cities? And then third, what are smarter cities? We have to be smarter than just smart cities. And in particular, look at strategies for single-use plastics and beyond. So the implication here is, although single-use plastic is a concern at the moment, we also have to look beyond single-use plastics and prepare the governance structure to do this. So first, modern society is built on plastic. So I'm showing here, a number of everyday technologies we depend on. Maybe you can try to guess how much plastic is in each of these, objects. So cars now actually have a lot of plastic. They're more plastic by volume rather than by weight. So, for example, a typical car would have about 8% of its weight would be plastic. And the plastic here, you would include, the bumper, even the tires. Tires you can actually consider to be rubber. That's also considered in the category of plastic. And the interior of vehicles, the dashboard, there's a lot of plastic. Also, that's 8%. Now the laptop, sorry, excuse me. So it could go up to 40%. 40% of a typical laptop would be plastic. Cell phone, there's even more plastic in cell phone, 60%. LCD screens, also about 60% plastic in LCD screens. The LCD screen itself is actually synthetic, it's plastic. Now, a lot of the homemade appliances or materials, um, you're getting up to 80%. So, you know, you have cups and stuff, but then you include here other things which have metals in them, about 80%. Now you look at the sportswear, you know, these nice looking jogging jackets and shoes. Um, that's actually 100% plastic. You go to a jogging, look at the jogging shoe, everything in the jogging shoe is plastic, from the sole to the top. Um, Maybe there are a few metal parts there, but it's really mostly plastic. And of course, these implements, obviously they're all plastic, and you know they're sold. Everyone has them in the house, and they're 100% plastic. And then finally, you go to the last one, and those are actually the single-use plastics, and they're 100%. So as you see all of these objects, um, quite a lot of them is really built on plastic, but we're really just looking at the last item, and it's because they're single use. The others are not single use. So the plastic baskets, they're plastic, but they're not single use. The jogging shoes are plastic, but they're not single use. So we're really just looking at the last item on this photograph. So that's what we're focusing on. So another more systematic way of looking at it is to look at you have all plastics, and then you have single-use plastics and durable plastics. Excuse me. And I've detailed some of the single-use plastics, different types. You have thermoplastics, which include grocery bags, packaging materials, bottles, PET bottles, straws. And then you have laminates, and of course the main types of plastic there would be the sachets. Some of the cosmetic packaging, pharma products are in laminates. Then you have the thermoset, non-recyclable plastics. Many of them are consumer products, but they're all still single use. And then people talk about bioplastic, but they're not really available yet. You see them advertised, you know, the cutlery that comes from seaweed, for example. But they're mainly on the research part. They're not, I don't think they're still commercial, and they're probably expensive. And then on the right side, you have the durable plastics, which we won't really talk about. But there's a big group of durable plastics. So of course, in cars, the plastics that are used in cars would all be durable plastic. So we have to understand plastics, because even single-use plastics, because there are different types of single-use plastics and different uses of single-use plastic. And this is important when we want to manage single-use plastics. Well, this is the growth of global population. So 2020, we're at about 7.5 billion people. And if you plot the global plastic production, and this is about the same period, from about 1950 to about 2020, 2015. So they're about the same time frame. And you can see that the rate of growth of the global population and plastic production are almost parallel. So if you sort of roughly multiply 7.5 billion people, and person would be about 40 kilograms if you include, you know, children to adults. The average, you know, would be about 40 kilograms. So 40 kilograms of plastic per person, you get 300 million tons of plastic, and that's about how much plastic is being produced. So you can say that every year, each person uses as much plastic as their own weight. So if you weigh, you know, let's say 60 kilos, you probably use 60 kilos of plastic every year. This is quite a lot of plastic. So you can really say that modern society is built on plastic. And unfortunately, another way of looking at it is modern society is really built on plastic, mountains of plastic, and it's really plastic garbage. So this is the concern that we have. How can we manage this plastic garbage which is building up? So with that brief introduction, we'll start with the first section, the challenge of single-use plastic. First of all, you have to realize that single-use plastics have become part of the Filipino livelihood. So here you see everyday uses of plastic. From taho, we buy soft drinks, they give it to you. We have a lot of takeout food now, so we use a lot of styrofoam. A lot of people eat on the roadside, so they have these plastic styrofoam bowls, and you buy the manggang hilaw. They're all packaged in plastic, and of course you have the PET bottles. And not only are they ubiquitous, but they're part of the Filipino livelihood. So a lot of people depend on this for their income. And of course, they're also part of the way of life. So we talk about the sachet economy. The sachet economy really reflects a way of life. Many poor people don't buy big, supply of big things. They just buy them by the sachet, and it's a way of life. And people who go shopping as well, even the rich people, depend on plastic. So a lot of products are packaged in plastic, whether it's vegetables, meat, and so forth. So it's part of way of life. So single-use plastics have become part of the Filipino livelihood and way of life. So to address this problem, you have to really address behavior. You can't just do things by legislation or by regulation. You have to understand behavior of people who use the plastic. You have to understand the livelihood that they depend on single-use plastic for their livelihood. The economics of plastics. If you're going to replace it, this is going to be as cheap or more expensive than single-use plastic. The value chain, the products go through a value chain, and you have to look at the plastics that are used in this value chain. And of course, for LGUs, then you want to control it. So how do you govern or pass regulation or implement regulations on single-use plastic? And then we go to the more sort of sophisticated things you have to understand. Life cycle assessment, which I'll briefly talk about later, and environmental impact, and the science, a little about the science and technology of plastic. So a little of the the science and technology of plastics. Something quite basic about plastics is that plastics, the basic material of plastic are polymers. So these are long chain chemicals, and each type of long chain chemical has a characteristic. So these are the recycling labels, which unfortunately we don't use this in the Philippines. But PET, or they call it PET, is a polyethylene terephthalate. That's your PET material for your PET bottle. It's supposed to be recyclable, and it is. It's one of the more recyclable materials. Then you have high density polyethylene. PVC is V is PVC, polyvinyl chloride. It's difficult to recycle, but a lot of it is reused. For example, a lot of the tarps are PVC, and you can reuse the tarp for something else. LDP is low density polyethylene, and these are mainly the plastic bags, and they're difficult to recycle. They're not economic to recycle. Polypropylene, and then you have polystyrene. They all have the recycling label, but really, they're not. Many of them are not really designed to be recycled. They just put the label on it. And one of the difficulties this is used in Western countries is that you have to be able to identify the plastic, and that's so you have a receptacle for polypropylene, or and they're not easy to pick apart. So you need, it's not something that is easy to implement if you want to make use of this label. And then you have this big category called other, and this can be a lot of other plastics which are not specified. So it's almost next to impossible to recycle the label number 7 because you have to know what it is, and it could be any of these listed polymers plus more. So um, actually, recycling the accusation against the recycling label is that it was just an excuse to put a label so that the manufacturers could get away with it, but they probably weren't serious about really recycling them because they're not economic to do so. And then in addition to these recycled plastics, then you have the non-recyclable ones. And these are the thermosets, although many of these are durable plastics. But we have a lot of thermoset plastics which are not recyclable, which are in everyone's home. So the problem here is, what do you do when your radio is already broken? You can't use it anymore. You throw it away. What are you going to do with the waste? So this is a challenge. Now, in addition to just the polymers, you have to worry about the additives. Additives are materials, chemicals that are added to plastic to improve or to modify their properties for specific uses. So you have plasticizers, you have antioxidants, radical scavengers, anti-UV materials, photochemical and fire retardants, metal stabilizers. Manufacturers add these to polymers to produce a plastic of a particular or particular purpose characteristics. The problem is they don't tell you what they are. So there may be a plastic, and you don't know what additives are in there, and quite a lot of these additives are harmful. So you could be ingesting heavy metals if you use it you boil it, or you drink from it, or you have all of these. If the plastic is exposed to sunlight, then you have to put anti-UV agents there, anti-ozone, and so forth. And these are not many of these are toxic compounds. Among the most toxic of these compounds are known as the endocrine disrupting compounds, plasticizers. These are what you call the phthalates. And so these are the concern with these phthalates and these bisphenol compounds is in implements that are used for baby plastic for use for babies. So, and they're endocrine disrupting. In other words, they will disrupt the hormonal balance, and so have hormonal problems, and some of which can lead to cancer. So the implication here is that we want to reuse, but you cannot reuse if you don't have adequate knowledge of what the additives are. So although there's a campaign to reuse, normally you down use. So if it was used for food, you don't use it for food anymore. You use it for something of a lower, lower level type of use. So it must be done with adequate knowledge. And if you're going to recycle, which means you're going to process it, then you have to have adequate technology, because if you're going to heat it or apply heat, then some of these additives will be released, and they could be toxic. So reuse and recycling of plastics has to be done, with knowledge of what the material is. So although we want to encourage people to reuse and recycle, we have to do it carefully. And if especially if you're going to do it in a large scale, then there could be health problems if the additives that are in the plastic are harmful. Now, this is the the legislation that covers solid waste management in the Philippines. So that's RA 9003. It was passed in 2001. So the Ecological Solid Waste Management Act, really, of course, this is a long time ago, almost 20 years ago, tackles solid waste as a whole. However, the management of plastic waste needs a different strategy. So this is meant to handle all types of plastic. But now we know with all this single-use plastic and other plastics, plastic waste needs a different a different strategy. A main issue with 9003 is it's based on an end of pipe approach, meaning we don't we manage it by looking at the garbage. We don't manage it at the front end, reduce the precursors to the problem. We just try to manage it at the end. It's an end of pipe approach, and since 9003 really depends on the landfill, then it's not surprising that we have a landfill problem. Um, so that's something that needs to be addressed, in particular with respect to single-use plastic. And another major problem with 9003 is a lack of multi-sectoral approach. If you look through the law, the main burden is really placed on local government units and DNR because they are the end of pipe people. They're the ones who manage the garbage, but they don't have any role, or they have very little capability within the law to implement guidelines or regulations on how to minimize the waste in the first place, because it's end of pipe and there's very little participation of other government departments in the solid waste problem, in particular the plastic problem. So parang sinabi, basta problema nyo yan. You have to solve it. It's an end of pipe approach, and you're the sector that has to do it. And that's not really a good way of managing single-use plastic. So we have this problem. So the urban population is about half of the Philippine population, about 51 million, about 47%, is urban. And most of the cities are coastal. Most of the major cities are coastal. Now, the urban solid waste is estimated at about 25 tons per day produced to be nationwide, and about 10% the, of the solid waste are plastics. So, we have a lot of plastics in our solid waste. And the problem here, because the major cities are coastal, is that, tulad ng sinabi ni Mr. Patalinghog, we're accused of ocean and plastic waste. So this is that well-known paper by Jampek in 2015, estimated mass of ocean plastic generated in 2010 by populations living within 50 kilometers of the coast. So that would include a lot of our major cities. And the Philippines was ranked number 3 in amount of plastic marine debris, and 83% of these were mismanaged or accused of being mismanaged plastic. And so, you have a big landfill, and of course, with a landfill, it's very difficult to avoid. You generate the macroplastic waste. So this is the plastic bags that you can see floating around, and then eventually this becomes microplastic waste. And another article which came out in 2016 measured the amount of microplastic waste in the marine ecosystem. And this is a map which sort of represents the amount of microplastic in the ocean. And as you can see, around the area of the Philippines, it's really red and bigger in size because of the amount of microplastic. So the plastic waste breaks down in the ocean into macroplastic and then microplastic. So clearly, the local governments then have a role in managing both the amount of macroplastic that goes into the ocean as well as the microplastic that's produced from them. And a lot of these would be single-use plastic. So, well, I guess the mantra has always been recycle, reduce, and reuse. These are the single-use plastics that we need to reduce. Sometimes you can reuse them, make make baskets out of some of the sachets, rags, and reuse them into garden things, the PET bottles. But and then sometimes they've been recycled. So there are people who would recycle the PVC into chairs, and then of course San Miguel announced a number of months back that they were piloting the use of recycled plastics for roads. Now, just some comments. You can't recycle all plastics into roads because there are specifications for road quality. So you cannot recycle all plastics into roads. And then for the using, for furniture, you have to be careful about the additives that are in the plastic. Make sure that they're not toxic. So yeah, you have to do the recycling intelligently, and you can't recycle everything. So the problem with the three R's is, um, well, you must find alternatives to single-use plastics. There's only so much plastic that you can reusing that you can do for single-use plastic, and that really most single-use plastics are not designed to be recycled. Uh, so we're trying to make do with single-use plastic, but they really weren't designed to be recycled. So clearly, the three R's alone are not enough to address the problem of single-use plastic. Now, in this was earlier this year, January, 75 countries introduced bans on lightweight bags, while 36 countries imposed a charge per bag. So different countries have approached and this is just plastic bag problem, not even all single-use plastic. So 75 countries said no more single-use plastic, lightweight bags, but others say you pay for the bag. And so in that map shows you the different strategies used. And this is just for plastic bags, not even for all single-use plastic. However, COVID-19 has forced many countries to relax bans against single-use plastic. Since we have a lot of takeout, etc. And we use a lot of plastic because we're afraid of the COVID stuff. So there's been an explosion of return of single-use plastic. However, still in October 2020, 170 nations pledged to significantly reduce plastic by 2030. So there's still a commitment of many countries to reduce use of plastics. But note that this is a 10-year time frame. So it can't be done immediately. It'll take time to actually do a proper or feasible reduction of plastic. So that's the challenge of single-use plastic. So go to the second part, which is really what are smart cities. Well, this section will just really describe smart city. Well, a smart city is really, imagined to be a high-tech intensive city. This is the definition given in 2012. And there's some aspects of a smart city which are, which we should note. First, it has to have a good ICT infrastructure. So now there's 5G and Internet of Things. So a lot of devices connected to the internet. We're not quite there yet. But to have a smart city, we have to have a functioning ICT infrastructure. We introduce some intelligence to the system. So we have to, we generate a lot of data, so big data, but we have to be able to analyze them and model what's going to happen. So it's the intelligent use of ICT. Of course, we use them to manage traffic and improve public transportation, but then you can use it also to manage other aspects of what happens in the city. Very important is that it has access to information for all. So a smart a city can't be smart if half the population cannot access the internet. So there has to be good access to information for all. Of course, we know this in COVID, that if there's no good access to internet, then we can't do education. Um, so this is something that we have to address. And of course, in the end, you want improved public service. And one of the public services that's highlighted here would be waste management. So in this presentation, we look at the smart city specifically in terms of how it can address waste management. So we asked the question, can smart cities solve the problem of single-use plastic waste? So that's the main question. In other words, you have this ICT, these technologies, so your city can be smart, but can it help us solve the problem of single-use plastic waste? So just summarize some of these ideas. So the smart cities have these characteristics of ICT infrastructure, so 5G, Internet of Things, intelligent use of data, analysis and modeling, manage traffic within the city, as well as this traffic can be pedestrian traffic as well. Improve transportation, access to information for all, can provide Wi-Fi in particular for all people, and improve public service from smart to smarter. So smarter cities should use these technologies to address the challenge of single-use plastic. So that's um, the the issue or the problem we want to address. Can we go from smart to smarter with all these technologies? My first point from smart to smarter is that you need to put people in the center. And this is an article from Russia, Waste Management in Green and Smart Cities, a case study of Russia. And here they said, and these are quotes from the paper, the development of waste management consists of two main connected parts, technological development and social and cultural development. In other words, you need both the technology as well as the social and cultural development. So you cannot just depend on, the Internet of Things or 5G, and that will solve your problem. So that's the smart city part, is the technology. What you need is social and cultural development. In other words, you need people. You need people to implement, to follow the, the guidelines, the regulations, and so that's the people part. So when I talked about the smart cities and the availability of the internet for all people, that is very important because that will enable you to communicate with all people, regardless of their wealth. And it's only by doing that you can um, affect social and cultural development. So both are important, the technology as well as the people. Um, Another section of the abstract says the effectiveness of introducing green technologies and ensuring the sustainable development of modern cities, especially in waste management, depends on the level of participation of citizens. In other words, it's not going to work if the citizens don't buy in, if they don't, freely and join in the program. So you can make all the rules that you want, but if the citizens don't participate, then it's not going to work. So that's a very important part of having a smarter city. And then final quote: people are active participants in the life processes of cities and have a direct impact on the urban environment. The introduction of green technologies can only be achieved in harmony with the well-established behavioral attitudes of city residents, together with the implementation of green and smart urban technologies. So we're just not the key word here is behavioral, because you can have people know it in their mind, but if it doesn't influence their behavior, then it's not going to work. So it has to be the the imbibing the whatever the guideline has to affect behavior and not just something they know in their mind. Um, so that's behavioral aspect is really very important. Now, closer to home, this is article from the Philippine Journal of Science, 2019. These are some authors from UP Diliman, and they did a study, synergy in the urban solid waste management system in Malolo City, Philippines. And this is their study is really very relevant to what we just discussed. Here, they looked at they did studies and models on the solid waste management practice and the result. So the first um, solid waste management practice, if there was no composting and no recycling, and this was their baseline. So they assumed that so they set that as the 100% solid waste disposed is 100%. Now, if the city puts up a materials recovery and composting facility, what they found is that this would reduce total volume of disposed solid waste by about 8%. So not very big. You only decrease it by 8%, but you have to increase your budget for solid waste management. Now, in the third scenario, if you have your materials recovery and composting facility plus public participation, the result is that you can further reduce total volume of disposable solid waste by about 30%. So a total of 30 plus 8 from the baseline, almost 38, 40% of solid waste can be reduced. And plus, you can get additional income from the collection of 3% of the solid waste based on the baseline values. So this article basically says is that public participation is the key to you know a significant or big reduction in solid waste. You can have the MRCF, the composting facility, but if the public does not participate, then it's gain from the you don't gain from the benefit of decrease in solid waste. So again, this highlights the need for people. So the theme here of this slide is that from smart to smarter, you need people. Now, from that, we expand to people plus industry plus government. So it's not enough that people participate. You need to have industry participate as well as government. So why is the LGU so important? So, well, people know about recycle, reduce, reuse, recycle, but it's LGUs that have a direct link to the people. So no other government agency has a close link to the consumer, the people, as the LGU. So here you can involve the consumer in your program. And then apply extended producer responsibility. This is the industry part. And this is already being discussed in the legislature to require industry to have extended producer responsibility, meaning that they're responsible for their products even after the life cycle of the product. I won't really spend time on this since this is in a way out of topic, but it focuses on the role of the industry. Now, the third important aspect is government, and LGU should promote a more whole of government approach. So you have the LGUs, the smarter cities, but you need, and of course, you also have DNR on the solid waste problem. But you need DTI, Department of Trade and Industry, to give support to the recycling industry or to new products. You need DOST for the research, also on the environment. You need DepEd and CHED, for the education part, and you need the legislature, Congress, to pass the smart laws, and other departments as well. So what the LGU can do is really promote a more whole of government approach, that it's not just the problem of the LGU or the DNR, but involve more departments in the whole process, and not just say that it's the problem of the LGUs or the DNR. Now, the one thing that has to be learned in assessing alternatives to waste is life cycle assessment. It can be described here. It's really a life cycle assessment provides a holistic picture for the entire production system, from resource extraction to the use, to the processing, the manufacture, to the commercial distribution and sale, to its use, consumption, to its waste management and disposal, and then final disposal. And then in addition, look at the environmental impact. It's LCA can be used to compare also impacts of different products, and but it's difficult to quantify environmental impacts for single-use plastic, ocean pollution, which is a significant environmental impact. So even with life cycle assessment, we still have to consider the environmental impact, and it's not really covered so much in LCA. But it's a good tool to use so that you can look at alternatives. And this is an article which really talks about life cycle assessment and the sustainability of single-use plastics ban. So in this article, they say, well, so governments are introducing single-use plastics ban to alleviate plastic marine pollution. So this paper investigates whether banning single-use plastic items is an appropriate strategy to protect the environment. A product life cycle assessment was conducted for single-use plastic as well as single-use non-plastic alternatives. In other words, there's also single-use but non-plastic. And I guess the most obvious one here would be plastic bags. Plastic bags are non-plastic, but they're single-use. So, single-use plastic bags versus single-use paper bags. So this paper concludes that single-use items are harmful to the environment regardless of their material. So they say that if you're looking at a more holistic analysis, both are harmful, whether it's single-use plastic or single-use paper bags. Regardless of material, they're harmful to the environment if it's single-use. Therefore, banning or imposing a premium price on single-use items in general, and not only single-use plastic items, the more effective method of reducing consumption and thereby reducing pollution. So many LGUs have regulations to say, bawal na ang single-use plastic bag, bibigyan kayo ng paper bag. And this article saying it's not a good solution either. Basically, just avoid single-use materials, whether it's plastic or otherwise. So they conclude the plastic ban only leads to a small reduction of global plastic marine pollution, and thus provides only a partial solution to the problem it tends to solve. So in short, it's what they're really saying is that instead of doing single-use plastic so much, it's really avoiding single-use, period. Yeah. And the example given here is the polyethylene single-use bags, paper bags, reusable non-moving polypropylene bags, and then reusable polyethylene bags. There are some which also include cloth bags. Cloth bags are actually quite demanding also from the environment. But anyway, if you compare all of these, it's clear that the polyethylene bags are um, use less non-renewable energy, if only for single use, and less water consumption. And at least in this table, which I guess is not comprehensive anyway, but still the one that's most favorable would be a reusable polyethylene bag with recycled content and use it at least 8 times, and you'll be better off than using the other material. So, I mean, this is a case study, but the idea is the same. Avoid single-use period, and well, in this case, it's reusable bag with recycled content. Of course, what's not. This is a study done in the West, in the U.S. This assumes efficient waste management, and there's no assessment of ocean waste. So um, I guess we should go more than 8 uses to avoid, the problems of, uh, lack of waste management, and to really minimize ocean waste. Uh, so there's some recommendations for single-use plastics from this document by the uh, UNEP, single-use plastic, and I'll go through them. Hopefully, this will be a list of advisory things that LGUs can follow. First is that it's always better to reduce consumption, and this is consistent with the avoidance of single use. So just you can reduce consumption by discouraging single-use materials, whether it's single-use plastic or single-use paper bags. Um, but just no single use or avoid single use. You need to analyze the problem and the proposed solution carefully. For this, you can use life cycle assessment, can help guide the decision between alternatives. I guess you have to learn how to use the tool of life cycle assessment. It's a tool that is used by engineers. The main problems are usually lack of enforcement and lack of viable, affordable alternatives. The lack of enforcement can be improved if you can use IT properly. So you can monitor, all the way from the supply side, supermarket, the industry, all the way to the disposal. And then also, now the other problem is viable and affordable alternative for this. We need to develop more better alternatives. Now, if you're going to use the recycled bags, and certainly that will help. It's also good for income for communities. The strategy should consider the entire system, from the manufacturer, the retailer, the consumer, the recycler, and waste management, as well as all of government. So yeah, we have to consider how all parts can contribute to helping solve the problem. And then develop appropriate multi-pronged approaches that may include bans, voluntary initiatives, financial incentives for alternatives, and others. So don't depend on just a single measure. Then the program should be continuously monitored and assessed, and be flexible and consider the best available science. This is the difficulty if you pass a law on single-use plastic, because laws are difficult to adjust. So if there's a new development, new science, then the law may get into the way of using new technologies. So the suggestion here is not to depend on legislation so much. Legislation can provide the framework, but don't use legislation to specify kinds of materials that can be used or cannot be used. So you consider the best available science for a particular time, especially if new developments are become available. The program must be sustainable in all aspects, environmental, economic, and social. And finally, local governments should use smart city technologies to link the people, commerce and industry, and all of government. So this is where smart city technologies, communication and um, behavioral change can becomes important. So at this point, um, I thought I'd have a small survey. These are single-use plastics, and maybe question is, can you? What's your recommendation on each of these single-use plastics, and how will you implement it? And for each single-use plastic, there are 6 possible answers. So one A is the total ban. B can be a selective ban. C is to impose a charge for use of the single-use plastic. D is have a returnable deposit. E is not to ban it, or F is other suggestions. So what I was gonna do is maybe to ask Camille,
Yes,
um,
yes.
maybe the participants, when I flash each of there are 8 products that I'll show, and I'll ask the participant, to hindi naman to graded. So walang take home ano ito, take home just to maybe something you can discuss it in the Q&A. So I'll flash 8 products, and then you can say for this product it would be 1A or 1B or 1C or 2A, 2B, etc. So the first product, of course, it would be single-use plastic shopping bag. So should it be a total ban, a selective ban? Would you just impose a charge? And, some cities say, you use a single-use plastic bag, bayad ka na ₱5. Or returnable deposit. So you deposit 10 pesos, and if you return the bag, then you get your 10 pesos back. No ban, or you have other ideas. So for shopping bags,
Okay po, we
okay,
encourage everyone po to answer in our chat box para makita po
ah,
natin kung ano yung...
siguro wag niyong sagutin kaagad ngayon.
Okay
Sabay-sabay
po.
kasi ano ito eh, wallet to eh. Para
Okay, sir.
each participant, isang padala na lang.
O
So
gusto
one,
niyo, sir, ay nino natin. Kasi lahat sila nagsasagot na po for the shopping bags.
hindi, sige,
Most,
hindi,
apa.
para mamaya, wag niyo sagutin kaagad para
Okay po.
ano. Kasi para isa lang ang titignan. Kasi di wala ito kung 10 sila, so 5
Sige,
times
sir.
8 ang titignan mo. So ano muna, shopping. Wag mo nang sumagot. Pwede
Pa.
niyong isulat muna, wag niyo muna ipadala. So this is a shopping bag. Pangalawa, packaging bag. So ito yung, di ba mag-order ka sa, diba, Shopee o ano. Pagdating sa'yo, merong packaging bag. Madalas di mo iwasan yan eh. Or at least hindi mo iwasan naman siya. Ano gagawin niyo sa packaging bag? As an LGU, how would you handle that? So packaging bag. Okay. Pangatlo, itong clamshell packaging. Ito yung mga fitted na ano. So iba-ibang paggamit ito. Yung iba, yung clamshell, diba, yung kung delikado yung produkto, let's say cellphone, kung minsan nakalagay yan sa clamshell para hindi maalog. Or sa itlog, yung itlog naka-clamshell yun eh. It's like fitted ano. It's used for many kinds of products, but many electronic products naka-clamshell packaging yan. So ano gagawin niyo sa clamshell packaging? Pang-apat, insulation packaging. So ito, of course, many products that you buy will have insulation, and that, mga polystyrene. Anong gagawin doon? Number 5, ito yung mga consumer product. Ito yung mga sachet. Of course, anong gagawin natin sa mga sachet? You ban it totally, have a selective ban, impose a charge, or returnable deposit, or Six, diapers and sanitary products. So yung mga baby diapers, anong gagawin dyan? Mga sanitary products. Kasama din yung mga pang senior. So maraming matatanda, mga kailangan na ng sanitary diapers. Yeah. So sanitary products na may plastic. And then yung medical products, mga gamot, naka blister pack. Those are single-use plastic. So how would you, what would you recommend to do with that, and how would you implement it? And then number 8 would be mga disposable face mask. Marami gumagamit ng disposable face mask. So, paano na to? Kailangan ng kailangan ng for safety. Pero syempre, marami ng nasa basura niyan. Okay, so those are the 8, and maybe you can think about it for a few minutes. So yeah, I'll just finish up na lang where we started. So I started by showing this photo. All of these products have plastics of different amounts, and really we just focused on the last item, single-use plastic. So in a sense, we're really just scratching the surface. Hopefully, if we can solve the single-use plastic problem, we can move on to tackle the other problems when it's time for people are disposing of them. How do we manage them? I mean, we can't just ignore them because the dami yan. So we showed this earlier, and we really just looked at that red box. Yun lang ang tinignan natin. So maraming single-use plastic, but we just focused on these thermoplastics and the laminate. We didn't even look at the other types of single-use plastic. So even the whole problem of single-use plastic, it's not yet finished. We just looked at a small part or a part of the single-use plastic. And then, of course, we didn't even touch the durable plastic. Finally, just leave you some references, some resources on single-use plastic. So these are all in the internet. They're downloadable for free. The UN, the UNEP on single-use plastics, you can download, look at their samples since it's global ang approach. The EU has a website on the circular economy, banning single-use plastic. But the thing about the EU is pangmayaman ito. So it's good to look at them, but pwedeng applicable, pwedeng hindi. But at least makita niyo yung trend. So I'm not automatically endorsing what the EU says, but it's something to keep in mind because maybe in 10, 15 years, baka pwede na natin gamitin yung mga recommendations nila. But it's something that's good to know. The second one would be from WWF. So this is a international NGO, and so they have their own approach, best practices on single-use plastic. So you can look at it. They do have some good suggestions, but then again, some of them may not be so applicable. But anyway, since you might face the WWF sometime in the future, you might still know what they're talking about. So if they have good ideas, then you can adopt it. If they have ideas that you cannot adopt, at least mapaliwanag nyo bakit hindi kaya o ano pang kailangan gawin. And then the last one is from the American Chemical Society. So this is more of the science behind plastics. I guess you would only look at that if you wanted to know more about the science part of plastics and polymers. So those are some resources you can look at on single-use plastic. So finally, just to close, we talked about single-use plastics, and it's really single-use plastics and beyond. So now we're looking at single-use plastics, but then in the future we'll be looking at plastics in general, and what smarter cities strategies smarter cities can implement. So on that note, thank you for your attention, and kung may sagot na kayo, pwede niyong i-forward kay Camille at mapag-usapan natin yung mga suggestions niyo sa pag-manage ng single-use plastic. So, yan. Maraming salamat.
Thank you, Dr. Dairit.
Mm.
So, siguro, Ma'am Rose Ann, i-flash lang natin yung last presentation ni Dr. Dairit regarding dun sa yung pinapasagutan. Para lang ma-discuss natin yung answers ng ating mga participants. So, mostly, sir, for the number 1 po, ang sagot nila ay, okay po. For our shopping bags, sir, most of them answered po A, total ban of the plastic, total ban of the shopping bags. Some answered po number D. Letter
Yeah,
D
well,
po.
ang ano dyan, whatever, yeah, well, wala namang tama o mali dito eh. Ang
Yes.
kailangan doon, kung ano yung sagot, how do you implement? Yun ang importante. So, if you say na wala ng plastic bag, how do you implement? Actually, that's the more important part. Kasi you can decide almost anything. Ang objective naman is to reduce the single-use plastic. And there are different strategies that you can do for that. But the more important is how do you implement it?
Okay. Noted, sir. For packaging bags, sir, most of them answered impose a charge and returnable deposits. Letter C and
Actually,
D.
hindi kompleto ng konti. Nadagdagan ko ng
Okay
isa
po.
pang item. But anyway, yeah.
And other for the clamshell and packaging, sir, same. Impose charge and returnable deposit din po. Most of their answers. For the
Dito,
insulation,
ito.
for the insulation packaging, some of them answered, okay, most of them answered impose charge, sir. Letter C and
Yeah.
letter
Ang ano dyan, if you imported charge, actually ang problema dyan, the product might be coming from overseas. So let's say nag-order ka sa ibang bansa, it's in the insulation packaging. Paano na yan? Hindi mo naman mati-charge yung overseas. And that might be true for the clamshell packaging. So that will only work if the company is located in your city. Kasi masasabi mo, ito yung produkto nyo, nilagay nyo ng packaging, bayaran ninyo. Pero in many cases, if it imported, nanggaling ng ibang bansa yan. So you cannot impose charge kasi it comes from the outside. Obviously wala rin deposit. So actually, you can't have a total ban. So actually, to be frank, I don't really have an answer yet to that. But so it would be, I guess, an other, because you have to look at the value chain. Where did it start? And then now it's ending up with a consumer. Anong gagawin ng consumer? And then how will the LGU control that single-use plastic material? So yun ang medyo challenge yan. So anyway, this is really to make people think that look at the value chain of the product and how you would tackle it. But anyway, sige, let's continue. Ano yung iba?
Yes, sir. Sir, same for the consumer products and diapers. Most of them answered also C and D po. Tapos, sir,
Actually, yung maganda dun sa consumer product, yung ibang kumpanya nagsimula na bigay ng commitment that they'll convert. So Nestle, I think, has a commitment to move away from sachets. And I think the thing with LGU is half the Philippine population lives in LGU, in cities. So malaki ang influence ng cities. If all the cities gang up on all of the gumagawa ng sachet, sabihin tama na yan, then of course you can't do it overnight. Give them time, so many years to convert. But the important thing is that LGUs have influence because half the people in the country live in urban areas. Yeah. Anyway, sige. Yeah.
Lastly, sir, for medical products and disposable face mask, most of them answered, sir, E. Hindi nila alam kung paano ba dapat i-dispose itong mga items na ito.
Yeah. No, that's true. Well, certainly well, I guess for the disposable face mask, um, may alternative naman ngayon eh. Except for the medical practitioners who really need yung N95 mask. Most people can actually do without disposable face mask. Eh. So may alternative ang disposable face mask since there are many, you know, reusable, washable face masks already available. So yung disposable face mask, may paraan pa yan. But ang exception mo will be the doctors and nurses. So yun ang may bibigyan mo ng exception. But yung sachet medical product, you'll have to discuss that with the pharma companies. Ano bang magandang Yeah, so again, for each product, I guess the exercise is for each product, you think about, its use, how necessary it is, and, I mean, who makes it? If they're made in the Philippines, then you have control. If they're made outside, then you have difficulty controlling that. So it would vary then. So anyway, that is really what that exercise is all about. So hopefully you found it useful.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Derit. And also to our participants na nag-participate po dun sa ating short survey. So now we go to the open forum. So for the open forum, we do encourage everyone here in the Zoom meeting room to kindly type in your questions and concerns in our chat box, or you may use the raise hand button po for raising your concerns. And for our viewers po sa ating Facebook live streaming, kindly use the comment sections to type in your questions and concerns. Kindly make your questions concise and direct to the point. So, kanina, Dr. Derit, habang ongoing ang ating talk, so nakapag-consolidate na po tayo ng mga questions nila sa ating mga chat. So, basahin ko lang, sir, isa-isa. So, first
Okay.
question,
Yeah.
sir, what are the ways that can household or barangay can do para ma-reduce or ma-eliminate yung consumption ng mga single-use plastics?
Well, I think at the barangay level, it's hard at barangay level kasi your scope of is limited. Eh. Of course, within the barangay, you can use since you're a neighborhood, you can actually discuss among yourself and um, what's acceptable to the barangay. So if it's yung single-use plastic bag, since that's probably the most easiest to get a handle on, is may agreement na sa buong barangay o wala nang gagamit ng single-use plastic bag and you can bring in a NGO na gumagawa ng mga recycled plastic bag, so may livelihood pa sila. So in fact, the barangays can do that, and since they're basically a neighborhood, they can influence each other. So that would be a good project for the barangay na within the barangay, wala nang gagamit ng single-use plastic. Pero again, you have to look at, I don't know, possible exceptions to the rule. Kasi mahirap rin maging, overly, I mean, if you haven't considered all of the possible situations where it's difficult to implement. But the important thing is, you have to discuss it with the people so that whatever you decide on, may buy-in lahat ng tao. And I guess sa barangay, hindi masyadong kailangan yung since magkapit-bahay naman kayo. At the city level, then that would be more important. So, pwede naman smart barangay to smarter barangay.
Thank you, sir. For our next question po, sa tingin niyo, sir, yung banning daw ba ng single-use plastic ay enough na measure para ma-solve yung issue ng plastic waste sa country?
That's only the beginning. First of all, I think in the list of maraming single-use plastic. We just looked at the simplest or the most accessible one. But there are many other single-use plastic products that I didn't discuss. Siguro in terms of frequency of use, the bags and the sachets would be the most frequently used, but they're by no means the only single-use plastic. So I think it's a process that we'll have to go through. It's essentially product by product almost, because, for example, you cannot put consumer products in the same category as medical products. They have different needs, and then you have, you have consumer products which are, let's say, mga shampoo or versus food. So you cannot really yung safety requirements for food products and non-food products is different. So it's they're not. Maybe you might have to consider different strategies for different kinds of single-use plastic. So anyway, as I mentioned when I started the talk, the process of our becoming single-use plastic users took about maybe 25 years, from the first time it appeared. So meron na siyang value chain. Now to reverse that, it will take some years also to reverse the value chain of single-use plastic. So to make it work, then we have to understand the value chain. So anyway, ang sagot, medyo hindi natin mas malulutas lahat agad-agad. Tsaka kailangan maintindihan anong klaseng single-use plastic, ano yung kanyang application, sinong gumagamit, etc.
Thank you, Dr. Derit. Next question po. From DOST-7, Sir Adrian Cruz. Majority of single-use plastics are sachets and tin plastics used when we buy viand or ulam and other wet products. Is there a possibility that Filipinos will refrain them from using this single-use plastics? Because in reality, there are already numerous resolutions from the LGUs, and still the problem is related to the waste management still persist.
Yeah, well, I think the very fact that people still use them is really a reflection of our dependence on them. Na hindi mo dadaan sa resolution yun. It's really, di ba dun sa recommendation, there should be a viable alternative. Kasi I think people understand naman that plastics can be avoided if possible. Nakikita naman yung kung may baha o plastic ang lumalabas. So I think people understand that. But the alternative has to be there so that people can actually look at the alternative. Yeah, of course, yung mga ibang I guess sa probinsya kung available lang lahat ng mga gumagamit ng mga banana wrapper. Tandaan noong unang panahon naman, sabi nila, yung mga produkto yan, nakabalot lang yan sa dahon ng saging, ba't hindi tayo pwedeng bumalik doon? Maybe to a limited extent can be done. If that can be raised to the level of technology, like there are people who recently shown that they can press fiber products into packaging. This would be banana fiber and some other fiber. The alternatives are there, then I think people will readily shift if there's an alternative that's available.
Thank you, Dr. Derit. For our next question from DOST3 Pampanga, Miss Shay Kembao. With the local legislations on banning plastics and or single-use plastics, rose the demand for eco bags. However, there were no regulations for the quality of eco bags. Several eco bags came out of the market are not durable, thus they are also for single use only. Can the DTI intervene in this matter? Same goes for the face shields for this pandemic. The face shields are definitely the addition to the single-use plastic waste in the community.
Well, yeah, certainly I agree with that. And yeah, I think the LGUs can bring this up to DTI. Kasi whatever product you come out with, it has to be quality. Hindi pwedeng, dahil hindi siya plastic, or hindi single-use plastic, pwede na. So tama yung observation. If we're gonna encourage people to start using multi-use bags, then there have to be at least some standards for them. Na if we say na the bag has to be good for 15 uses, di merong grupong you know, and usually of course may weight limit, may ganun. I think that there are criteria naman that can be adopted for various products that minimum quality standards. So that's a good observation, and maybe that should be brought up to the DTI.
Thank you, sir. For our next question from Mr. Pax Perez, for smarter cities, what are the good strategies for disposal of diapers? Are there countries that are successful in implementing proper disposal of diapers aside from disposing it directly to a landfill?
Well, actually, merong mga ibang gumagamit na ng um, what do you call this? Well, I guess yung unang panahon, it should be maybe 20, 30 years ago, wala namang sanitary napkin na may plastic. Now I think people have come out with pads that are plastic, but then pwede mong hugasan. So there are alternatives, and I guess we just have to take companies that deal with these products, and maybe that's where pressure can be put on the main manufacturers to provide alternatives. Kasi of course yung convenience naman ng plastic diapers ay siya, yung hindi siya tutulo, di ba? That's basically what you want, but at the same time, we don't want it to be disposable. So I think it's possible to develop a product. I mean, I'm not in that business, so I can't give specific suggestions. But I think it's the problem that I don't think that problem is insurmountable, and maybe the DNR or the LUs can put pressure on the companies to already move to alternative, away from diapers and those pads and stuff.
Thank you, Dr. Derit. For our next question from Mr. Armin Sarto, can we actually hold off the use of incineration for much longer? At the end of the day, these plastic products will actually need to be disposed somehow, whether you charge for their house or not. I think this is the most important question, their final destination.
Well, ang as in any technology, you have to look at the value chain. Actually, ang incineration, you can't just burn anything. And as I mentioned, there are plastics that you really can't burn. For example, well, just to give you an example, ang polyethylene, which is one of the polymers used to make plastic, polyethylene itself will burn. Kasi lang yan, hydrocarbon lang yan. But they add um, fire retardant to polyethylene, so the polyethylene doesn't burn. So by its nature, the plastic material is resistant to burning. So hindi na siya, kumbaga, hindi na siya efficient tulad ng gasolina. And then some of the plastics have metal and mga endocrine disrupting compounds. So some of them are really not that suitable for burning. And then secondly, before you burn it, you have to clean it up. I mean, to keep a fire going, you have to put in dry material, di ba? So hindi lang kahit anong plastic pwede mong sunugin. So even the material that you burn has to be, selected. Siguro baka ang model na ginagamit nila yung incinerator sa Japan na malinis. Malinis yung plastic na sinusunog. Kung marumi yung plastic, kailangan mong dinisan. So, not all plastics can be burned so easily. And then you need a lot of technology to analyze the stack. So you use mass spec, and they're actually quite expensive. There's such a mass spec in EMB, Diliman, and I don't know how often it operates, but it's an expensive technology to maintain. And I guess the thing is, once you've set it up, then you have to keep feeding it to Unang-una, many of the incinerators charge a fee, may tipping fee yan. Kasi what they're burning is not really fuel, but it's it needs special treatment. So the technology itself is expensive. So I don't know. Um, I yeah, there are downsides to incineration which really have to be considered. So I guess the alternative is look at other technologies, to that can um, avoid, or alternative ways of processing the waste that we already have. Kasi once you have it there, then you'll need to keep operating it to make it economically feasible. So in the end, it's going to be expensive also.
Okay, sir. For our next question from Miss Claire Vinarao, can we ask for your opinion about single-use cutleries, sachets, and other disposable materials in the fast food chains relative to the COVID-19 pandemic? Mas okay po ba na gumamit muna ng SUP for health and safety instead of reusable utensils and containers?
Well, I think now, I guess the COVID problem is, in a sense, it's an exception to the rule. That's the problem with in COVID. There, it's made the single-use plastic, um, complying with single-use plastic more difficult. Hopefully, we should use this opportunity to develop the alternatives already. And there are already alternatives that have been mentioned, but the challenge there is how to make it more economically, competitive with the use of plastic cutlery. Um, so there are alternatives to coming up on single-use plastic materials, which hopefully will continue to get developed. So that's where the science comes in. Um, I think the reports on the use of other natural materials, including I think the other one was seaweed ang material, and then some were looking at well, I saw a report on pressed um, some pressed leaves. So they parang laminate the leaves and makes them um, more more sturdy. Um, Maybe to be used as implement. So those are some possibilities. But right now we don't have the immediate alternative. So that's something we should look into.
Thank you, sir. And for our last question from Facebook po, from Miss Jamie Chua of Radyo Pilipinas Baguio. Is the study disseminated to our EMBDNR nationwide for them to use this in their advocacy for the control and or address concerns, especially on solid waste management?
Yeah, well, I hope I hope DOC can share this with DNR. Well, certainly, DNR should know about this because that was one of my points that lahat ng problema ng solid waste nakatambak sa LGU at sa DNR, which is really the end of pipe strategy, which we should stop, just looking at things as end of pipe. Look at we should look at the source of the waste and see how we can deal with it from the front end instead of just looking at the back end. And I'm sure DNR would be interested in that. Will make their lives easier, but they'll have to pull in the other agencies to help them with the process. Kaya nga dapat talaga whole of government. Hindi pwedeng sinabi dahil basura yan, problema yan ng DNR, tsaka problema ng LGU eh. Kailangan from the front end, pag-isipan din anong magagawa para mabawasan itong problema ng plastic waste.
Thank you, Dr. Derit and Miss Jamie. And for just an insight po from Mr. Jaime Marino. So there are many LGUs now that already regulate the single-use plastics. Example, the province of Siquijor, San Carlos Negros Occidental, and City of San Fernando, Pampanga, among others. We need a national law to implement the ban of single-use plastic in the country. The national government should provide some of the incentives to these LGUs, that initiative reduction of single-use plastic. So yun po, magandang insight yun na dapat yung government
Mhm,
natin, we have initiatives also for them
mhm.
para
Yeah.
mas-sustain. Sige
Yeah,
po, sir.
actually, last I think it was February. I don't know if it was Gaia or one of the NGOs had a nationwide survey, and it looks like people man accept that there's a problem with single-use plastic. So I think the knowledge about this problem is many people know it. Yung ano na lang is how to provide alternatives and guidelines, etc. And also, well, about the legislation again, ano I think the law should provide a framework, but not be too specific, because there could be new developments in the future that might make it necessary to amend the law, and that's difficult. Um, yeah, and certainly yung ibang recommendation na hindi lang itatambak sa DNR at LGU ang problema. It should be a whole of government approach.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dairit, for answering all the questions. So kapag po may mga questions pa tayo na gustong itanong sa ating speaker, you can just email your questions or concerns to us po. So we would like first to acknowledge the presence of our Regional Director. Hello po, Mr. Josebi Patalinhog III. Sir Jojo, good afternoon po. Hintayin lang po natin si RD Jojo. So you can just email your questions and concerns po sa pamamarisan@ncr.dost.gov.ph. And we will also answer them po sa tulong po ni ang ating speaker ni Sir Jo. Okay po. So siguro po later po, magbibigyan po tayo ng message from our RD po. So now at this part of the program, we have invited a representative from the City Environmental Management Bureau of NCR to give us a response for today's topic. Allow me to welcome Ms. Alma P. Ferrareza, Senior Environmental Management Specialist of DENR EMB NCR.
Thank you.
Afternoon, Ma'am
Good
Alma.
afternoon to everybody. As a reaction to the talk of Dr. Dairit, I just want to say that I fully agree with what he has discussed, especially on how we manage plastic. As he has said, we are in a plastic era, and we are in a throwaway society. As we can see in the video that was shown a while ago, where most of the water bodies are full of plastics. Although we have the Republic Act 9003 or the Ecological Solid Waste Management Act of 2000, still compliance to the law is very low. This is basically because LGUs, it is not the priority of LGUs. What they usually want is for their cities or their municipalities to be clean. And they do away with the proper management or what is required by law. So most of the waste goes to the landfills and others goes to our waterways. Uh, I know we have a lot of programs on how to reduce the disposal of single-use plastics. Although most LGUs in Metro Manila have banned or regulated the use of single-use plastics. However, uh, after our monitoring this year, most of the implementation of proper solid waste management have backlogged because of the pandemic. So what is required by law that we should segregate at source, and this is usually not basically not being done at the moment because of COVID-19 for health reasons. Uh, as Dr. Dairit has mentioned, the effectiveness of introducing green technology and ensuring the sustainable development of modern cities, especially in waste management, depends on the level of participation. So yun po ang pinaka-importante, that uh, all of us should participate. All of us should manage our waste properly, lalong-lalo na yung single-use plastics. Because these are the items we most find in the coastal areas, in water bodies, na lalong-lalo na after typhoons, na makita mo sa Manila Bay, punong-puno ng plastic yung coastal area. So, uh, at the moment, since this is what we basically see, lalong-lalo na sa coastal areas, the DNR developed some programs or allotted funds for this year to assist LGUs manage their plastic waste. So the DNR decided to provide, since as I have said, management of solid waste is quite low in implementation. So the DNR decided to help LGUs manage this plastic. So the DNR decided to provide the LGUs this year with a plastic chair factory, at least to manage the disposal of plastic waste. So from what we would want to do is to transform the citizen to do away from a throwaway society. So they would be collecting plastics which they could given or collected by the LGU and transform this into plastic school chairs. So instead of throwing this waste plastics, this could be used in a more better way, because this could be transformed into plastic school chairs. So each Metro Manila LGU would be provided this equipment, probably up to the end of the month or until the first quarter of 2021. Aside from that, we also have programs with uh, industries and NGOs where they would be buying back the plastics and exchanging it for other materials or other products. And these plastics could be used as an alternative fuel for cement kilns. So in somehow this would reduce the disposal of plastics. Also, we have the National Plan of Action for marine litters. So actually, this paper is already with the executive board of the DENR for approval of the DENR secretary. If you would allow me to share the strategies, it's just a one slide to show you the different strategies. So these are the proposed strategies for the NPOA. So strategy one is to establish science and evidence-based baseline information in marine litter. Strategy two is mainstream circular economy and sustainable consumption and production initiatives. Strategy three is enhance recovery and recycling coverage in markets. Strategy four, prevent leakage from collected and or disposed waste. Strategy 5, reduce maritime sources of marine litter. Strategy 6, manage litter that is already existing in the riverine and marine environments. 7, enhance policy support and enforcement for marine litter prevention and management. 8, develop and implement a strategic and targeted social marketing and communications campaign using various media. 9, enable sufficient and cost-effective financing and other institutional resource requirements for the implementation of the NPOA. And 10, strengthen LGU capacities and local level implementation of the NPOA. So these are the proposed strategies for the national program, a national plan of action for the prevention, reduction, and management of marine litter. So this could somehow manage or reduce the disposal of plastic waste to the marine environment. So what Doc Dairit have said would help very much or could contribute to the development and implementation of this NPOA. So that is all, Ms. Camille.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Alma, for sharing your thoughts and ideas about this topic. So, nalaman natin na maraming ginagawa yung government natin to resolve the issues on plastic waste. So, with that, again, thank you po to Dr. Derit and Ma'am Alma for sharing your thoughts. So, the success of this event will not be possible without the presence of our speaker and our reactor. So, to award this certificate of appreciation, so let me first read the citation. Ay, Ma'am Alma, pa-stop share na lang po muna tayo. Thank you po. So, yan po. So, to allow me to read the citation. So, the Republic of the Philippines Department of Science and Technology National Capital Region awards this certificate appreciation to our speaker, Dr. Fabian M. Dairit, for sharing his invaluable expertise as a resource person for the forum titled Single-Use Plastic Strategies for Smarter Cities, held on November 16, 2020 via Zoom as part of the 2020 NSTW celebration, signed by our Regional Director, Mr. Josebi Patalinhog III. Thank you, Dr. Dairit. And also, thank you, Dr. Dairit.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you.
And also to our reactor, allow me also to read the citation. We would also like to express our gratitude to our reactor by awarding this certificate of appreciation to Ms. Alma Ferrareza for providing her insights in the forum titled The Single-Use Plastic Strategies for Smarter Cities, held this November 16, 2020 via Zoom as part of the 2020 NSTW celebration, signed by our Regional Director, Mr. Jose B. Patalinhog III. Thank you, Ma'am Alma.
Thank you too.
Thank you, Ma'am. So to give a short synthesis for today's session, let me call on our Pamamarisan cluster staff, Miss Engineer Rosa and Fernandez, for the synthesis.
Thank you, Ms. Camille Esamado. Also to our speaker, Dr. Dayrit, and to our reactor, Ms. Alma Ferraresa. There is no denying the advantages of plastics. The material is cheap, lightweight, and easy to produce, that its utilization boomed in recent years. This trend has dramatically increased plastic production, thus increasing the amount of solid waste generated from it. After China and Indonesia, the Philippines rank as the world's third biggest polluter with 2.7 million metric tons of plastic waste generated each year. According to a 2018 study of waste management practices in Southeast Asia, the Philippines has a high garbage collection rate and the rubbish is not disposed properly. Dr. Fabienne Deirit highlighted the challenges of single-use plastics as this become part of Filipinos' way of life. And to address this challenge, we must consider the behavior, economics, technology, value chain, and life assessments thereof. Dr. Deirit also discussed the technology, social, and cultural development that will solve the problem of single-use plastic waste. Some of the recommended solutions are introducing by the green technologies by implementation of green and smart urban technologies and ensuring the sustainable development of modern cities, especially in waste management, and increase the level of participation of citizens. Dr. Dairit also recommends the reduced consumption of single-use plastic and analyze the problem to find the appropriate solution, to strategize and consider the entire system from manufacturer, retailers, consumer, recycler or waste management, and the government. Also to develop appropriate multi-pronged approaches that may include bans, voluntary initiatives, financial incentives for alternatives, and other sustainable approach. Further, to adopt smart city technologies that will link the people, the commerce, and the industry and the government. He also added that existing programs for solid waste management should be continuously monitored and assessed to adapt the changing environment. To date, the Philippines has a law addressing solid waste problem like the Republic Act 9003, also known as RA 9003 or the Ecological Solid Waste Management Act of 2000, which provides a systematic, comprehensive, and ecological solid waste management program in the country. This also mandates that every village or cluster of villages must set up a materials recovery facility or MRF where biodegradable waste is converted into fertilizer. Recyclable materials is recycled or sold to junk shops, and residual waste is collected for transport to sanitary landfills. Another program implemented by the national government under the National Solid Waste Management Commission Resolution number 1363 series of 2000 is the banning of unnecessary single-use plastics such as plastic cups lower than 0.2 mm thickness, plastic drinking straw, plastic coffee straws, plastic spoons, plastic forks, plastic knives, and plastic labo or thin film sandbags lower than 15 microns. Plastic waste generated is one of the greatest environmental issue not only on the Philippines but to the whole world. Individuals must act responsibly, businesses must innovate and look into sustainable or green technologies, and government to work and consolidate all the efforts of the stakeholders to face the challenges posed by the single-use plastics. Thank you po.
Good afternoon po, Ma'am Roms.
Hello,
Yan.
Camille.
Yes,
Sorry,
ma'am.
parang wala
Okay
akong
po.
marinig kanina. So, magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. We also, on behalf of our regional director, Josebi Patalino III, our RDS was trying to join kanina. Medyo nawala lang po saglit. And our partners for this activity, the National Academy of Science and Technology and the National Research Council of the Philippines. We would like to thank our participants from the LGUs, the academe, the industry, government agencies, and the general public for joining us this afternoon. So, masaya po kami na naka-join pa rin kayo. We were supposed to have this. Hindi, wala po yatang marinig. Okay na po.
Yes, ma'am. Meron po, Ma'am Roms.
Lumapit si Sandy sa akin. We were supposed to have this last week, ano po, and but with the typhoon, we had to reschedule for this week. So we hope that all our families po are safe. We also extend our sincerest appreciation to our speaker for today, Academician Fabian M. Dairit, for sharing his extensive knowledge and insightful recommendations on the challenges posed by single-use plastics and strategies that all of us can consider as we face paano ba natin matutulungan ang ating mga sarili sa aspetong ito. We would also like to thank our reactor, Ms. Alma Ferraresa, for sharing the initiatives of the DNR to address the challenge. Gaya po ng na-experience nga natin last week, no? May mga issues that we face that may be attributed to a confluence of factors. So hindi lang siya isa, maraming mga reasons at minsan nagpapatong-patong sila at nagiging complicated yung issues na hinaharap natin. And as such, the strategies would also require multi-pronged approaches, and importantly, they should be backed by science. For us Filipinos, managing the use of single-use plastics would also require a whole society approach from technology generators such as yung mga partners natin from the academe, governments, producers, end users. Kasama na rin po dito yung mga partners natin sa media and strategic communicators and influencers. As we have already built, sabi nga ni Dr. Dairit kanina, we have built a way of life and livelihood that relies heavily on single-use plastics and plastics in general. As our speaker has shared, while researchers work on the technologically viable and affordable alternatives, there is also a need to consider extended producer responsibility and address consumer preferences and behavioral predispositions. As we end today's discussion, the challenge, mahirap, is towards inclusive policy directions that would consider a holistic view of the whole production system, particularly the value chain then. Technological characteristics, ano yung current capabilities natin and current constraints and future capabilities then, economic factors, and more importantly, consumer perception and behavior. Again, thank you and have a great afternoon.
Thank you so much, Engineer Tres Valles. Now for the announcement for the upcoming sessions for tomorrow. Tomorrow will be our last session. So our last session would be on November 17, 2020 on Tuesday, 1 o'clock to 3 p.m. This would be the demand metrics of urban green spaces, establishing tenets of urban biodiversity. And our speaker is Dr. Leonora P. Gonzalez. We do encourage everyone who registered in our webinars to enter the virtual meeting room 30 minutes before the session starts. And for those who cannot be admitted in the Zoom meeting room, you can still watch us through our DOST-NCR official Facebook page. Kindly check your email and instructions for the guidelines for our last session. And also, we have included in our chat box po yung ating evaluation link. And before we end this session, we would like to take this moment for a photo opportunity with our speaker and our participants. So that may I request everyone in the webinar room to open their videos and smile to the camera. So bibilan lang po siguro kami ng 20 seconds po para ma-capture po natin lahat. So everyone po, smile po tayo to the camera. Makikita ang magagandang ngiti. Smile lang po. Okay. Thank you so much po to everyone. Again, on behalf of our Regional Director, Mr. Jose B. Patalinhog III, our Assistant Regional Director, Engineer Romelan T. Tres Valles, our Cluster Director, Mr. Oscar Sevilla, we thank everyone who participated in this webinar, especially to our speaker, Academician Fabian Dairit, and to our reactor, Ms. Alma Ferrareza, to our partner agencies from DOST-NRCP, DOST-NAST, and to those who watch us through our Facebook live streaming. This has been your moderator, Camila Estimado, wishing you a good day. Thank you and keep safe. See you again
Okay,
po
sige.
tomorrow. Thank you.
Sige,
Yes,
thank
sir.
you.
Yes, sir, Dairit.
Sige, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We live in an era of constant change. Innovations are so common in this day and age. To ignite the mind in these exciting times is how we move the nation in this new millennium. We nourish and heal our people by making them able to do great things, to spread our wings. We save and protect the land in any way we can. We empower the Filipino and unify all. Ignite the mind, light the fuse, the spark of inspiration. Ignite the power of a brand new breed of Filipino. We bring advancements in science and technology to bear. We are DOST and we pave the way for the future. Ignite the mind, move the nation, nourish and heal our people. Ignite the power of a brand new breed of Filipino. Ignite the mind, light the fuse, the spark of inspiration to save and protect the land. We are DOST and we pave the way for the future. Everything starts when you ignite the mind. DOST.
Para po sa mga nandito pa po sa ating webinar room, nilagay po namin yung link ng ating evaluation form sa ating chat box. So you can access this link po until 10 p.m. today. Maraming salamat po.
We live in an era of constant change. Innovations are so common in this day and age. To ignite the mind in these exciting times is how we move the nation in this new millennium. We nourish and heal our people by making them able to do great things, to spread our wings. We save and protect the land in any way we can. We empower the Filipino and unify all. Ignite the mind, light the fuse, the spark of inspiration. Ignite the power of a brand new breed of Filipino. We bring advancements in science and technology to bear. We are DOST and we pave the way future. Ignite the mind, move the nation, nourish and heal our people. Ignite the power of a brand new breed of Filipino. Ignite the mind, light the fuse, the spark of inspiration to save and protect the land. We are DOST and we pave the way for the future. Everything starts when you ignite the mind. DOST. We live in an era of constant change. Innovations are so common in this day and age. To ignite the mind in these exciting times is how we move the nation in